Our last module is on decontamination. Notice this heavily encrusted I/O motor. A high-pressure wand is used to remove the quagga mussels. Notice the concentration of mussels below the waterline, around the gimbal, and along the bottom of the anti-cavitation plates. A note about safety. Safety and productivity cannot be separated. Ensure public and personal safety by wearing all personal protective equipment. Be aware of your surroundings and prepare the site accordingly to avoid slips, trips, falls, and burns. Remember, think safety before you start. Decontamination consists of a hot water application with either high or low pressure. There are no soaps, bleaches, or chemicals used or recommended at this time. Hot water with low pressure kills the mussels and other ANS. Hot water with high pressure removes the mussels and other ANS. High pressure should only be used on the exterior, hard parts of the boat. Decontamination protocols are based in science. In this module, you will need to learn and memorize the following. 140-degree water at high pressure is used to decontaminate the hull and exterior. 140-degree water at low pressure is used to decontaminate motors and engines. 120-degree Fahrenheit water at low pressure is used to decontaminate the interior compartments and equipment to avoid damage. A 10-second exposure to 140-degree Fahrenheit water will kill adults, and 95 degrees Fahrenheit will kill villagers. Standard operating procedures, or SOPs, for the different types of units are very similar, but not the same. Know what make and model is used at your WID location. Read the SOPs provided with that unit. Now, let's watch a video of our decontamination specialist demonstrating the standard operating procedure for a hydrotech or hydroengineering branch decontamination unit.
When operating a hydrotech decontamination unit, follow the standard operating procedures before and after performing a decontamination to ensure that the unit works properly and to avoid costly repairs later. The hydrotech unit consists of a small engine, a pump, and a burner. The engine runs on unleaded gasoline and the burner runs on either diesel or kerosene fuel. Be sure to check fuel levels before operating the unit and never mix the different types of fuel or fill the wrong fuel tank. All tanks should be clearly labeled. The pump uses a non-detergent oil which should be checked regularly. Depending upon the model, the pump will either have a dipstick or a window to check oil levels. The oil should be a yellow or brown color and have a clear, translucent appearance. Be sure that the oil does not look cloudy or have a milky consistency. This is an indication that there may be a leak and that the pump needs to be repaired. The last fluid to check is the engine oil. Find the dipstick with a yellow ring on the engine and check that the oil is full and clean. Engine oil that is dirty should be changed. Next, roll out the high-pressure hose and check all connections. Decontamination units should never be operated without water and must be connected to a water source. This can be either from a garden hose connection or a water storage tank. Check the water filter for mud, debris, or other obstructions. Once all fluids are checked and water is connected, the decontamination unit is ready to be started. First, depress the trigger so that the pressure does not build up in the system. Next, pull the metal choke and then turn the key. When the engine turns over, push the choke back in. Once the engine is running and water is moving through the system, turn the burner switch to on. A red light will appear when the burner is on. Turn the knob to adjust the water temperature setting. Use a thermometer to ensure that the water is either 120 or 140 degrees, depending upon the procedure. Perform the step-by-step decontamination procedure as needed. Once the decontamination is complete, shut down the unit by first turning off the burner. Continue to squeeze the trigger on the spray gun until the water cools. Next, turn off the engine and the water supply. Finally, squeeze the trigger to release any trapped pressure or water, disconnect the attachments, and store the unit properly.
Your first priority when performing decontaminations is always safety. This includes wearing personal protective equipment, awareness of your surroundings and the public, proper maintenance and operation of equipment, and your attitude. Respect your equipment and use it in a professional manner. Education is also very important. Explain to the boater why decontaminations are important and the benefit of doing it now rather than later. Provide the boater with educational brochures and ask them to read them in a safe location while you perform the decontamination. Make sure you are properly documenting the decontamination. A high-risk inspection form must be filled out before and after the decontamination, as well as the ANS decontamination and vessel decontamination forms. Photos must be taken and samples must be collected for identification prior to doing a full decontamination. Report all full decontaminations to your supervisor and the ANS program. Remember, the purpose of decontamination is to kill and remove the ANS. Following decontamination procedures will kill all ANS on the watercraft. Remove mud, plants, water, and organisms from the watercraft to the best of your abilities. There are 4 types of decontamination that you may perform: standing water, plant, bait, and full decontaminations. Standing water decontamination is the most common. It forces infested water out of the watercraft while killing veligers and other ANS in the water. Plant decontamination is performed whenever plant material cannot be removed from the watercraft or trailer by hand. Bait treatment protocol is performed when live aquatic bait is present without a valid receipt. Full decontamination is performed when suspect or known mussels are detected on the conveyance. This is a combination of all of the above procedures, plus paperwork, samples, and photos. There are certain times when standing water decontamination is mandatory. If the watercraft has been drained to the fullest extent possible and still contains standing water in the bilge, ballast tanks, live and bait wells, or engines, or cannot be verified, then perform a standing water decontamination to that location. You learned the triggers for mandatory decontamination in the last module on inspection. Remember, standing water rules. Standing water decontamination is the most common. It forces infested water out of the watercraft while killing veligers and other ANS in the water. It is performed on interior compartments or engines that contain water, cannot be fully drained, or have equipment that has come into contact with the water body. Prior to decontaminating interior compartments with pumps, please be sure that you have tested the temperature of the water and the unit is running at 120 degrees Fahrenheit to avoid damage to the pumps. The temperature of the water from the spray gun and the wash water exiting the watercraft must reach the temperatures listed. Use a diffuser, Fake-A-Lake, or motor flushing muff attachment to perform a standing water decontamination. The high-pressure wand is never used in a standing water decontamination. During the entrance and exit inspection, any plant or plant fragment must be hand removed and properly disposed of away from the water body. Sometimes plant fragments get caught between the hull and the trailer bunks, or wrapped around the propeller and cannot be removed. It is then mandatory to decontaminate the areas where plant fragments remain. Soak plants with 140 degree Fahrenheit water for 15 seconds. Be sure to use low pressure, especially on carpeted bunks and on the transducer. High pressure may be used on the trailer frame, rollers, and propeller. If a ballast boat has plant fragments on it, then the ballast tanks must be flushed to eliminate possible fragments within the tank. If plant fragments are found on the outside of a watercraft, internal systems may be flushed to eliminate possible fragments within. Now, let's watch a video demonstrating a plant decontamination.
The Watercraft Inspection and Decontamination Program prevents the spread of most aquatic invasive species, including plants or noxious weeds. Hand removal of plants is part of every inspection. Decontaminations are performed when plant fragments on the boat or trailer cannot be fully removed by hand. Even small pieces of aquatic plants can start an irreversible infestation if introduced into a new lake or reservoir. To perform a plant decontamination on the exterior of a boat or trailer, follow the standard operating procedures for your decontamination unit and use a handheld thermometer to measure the temperature until it reaches 140 degrees. Once the proper temperature is reached, soak the plant fragments for 15 seconds to kill them. Use high-pressure water to remove plants that are attached to the exterior of the boat or propeller. Use low-pressure water to remove plants on carpeted trailer bunks to avoid damaging the trailer. If the plant fragments are inside the boat and cannot be removed by hand, soak the plants with low-pressure 120-degree water for 15 seconds to kill them. Finally, follow the standard operating procedures to shut down the decontamination unit.
All right, you're good to go. You guys have a good day out on the water.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent.
Remember, the goal for every inspection is no plants, no mud, no water, and no mussels in between each and every launch.
Bait treatments may be performed at your site. Live aquatic bait regulations differ between the east and west slopes, some counties, and specific waters. You learned about bait regulations in the last module on inspection, but remember to check with your supervisor to verify you understand any specific rules for your lake or reservoir. If the boater has a bait container or bait well with standing water, allow the boater to proceed with the bait as is, if the receipt is from a Colorado bait dealer and is dated no more than 7 days prior, and the species listed on the receipt matches the bait. If the receipt is older than 7 days, perform a bait treatment. A clean bucket and fish net will be located at every WID station. Ask the boater to remove the bait from the container and place it into a clean holding container. Try to minimize transferring water from the bait container to the holding container. Standing water decontamination temperature for interior compartments with pumps is 120 degrees Fahrenheit with low pressure. Replace the water with reservoir water before entering. Remember that bait containers or wells need to be completely drained after use. The boater may take the bait with them when leaving if they provide distilled water to put the bait in. Tap water is likely to kill it. Do not allow any out-of-state bait to be used at your body of water. Proper disposal of bait goes into the trash, never into the body of water. If the boater does not provide a receipt, then have the boater dispose of the bait in the trash, away from the water body. However, there are a few scenarios that permit a bait treatment with no receipt. If that bait is fish and was harvested within 1/2 mile of the reservoir from man-made ditches or canals, or if the bait is fish and was harvested within the 5-county exemption, or if the bait is wild harvested, non-bait fish. Now, let's watch a video demonstrating the bait treatment protocol.
Live aquatic bait is a common pathway of introduction and spread for harmful invasive species. Regulations about bait vary throughout the state. Therefore, inspectors must know the bait rules at their specific location. Live fish are allowed for use as bait east of the Continental Divide, below 7,000 feet, and Navajo Reservoir. Fish are not allowed to be transported and stored for later use, except in 6 counties in southeastern Colorado. Possession of live crayfish is prohibited west of the Continental Divide and from Sanchez Reservoir. Out-of-state bait is never permitted. Asking about live aquatic bait and visually examining containers for bait is part of every A&S boat inspection. All live aquatic bait must be purchased from an authorized bait dealer and must be accompanied by a receipt. Allow the boater with bait to proceed if the receipt is from Colorado and the receipt is dated within 7 days and the species listed on the receipt matches the bait. If the receipt is older than 7 days, perform a bait treatment to remove the threat of A&S. To perform the bait treatment, you will need a 5-gallon bucket and an aquarium net. Have the boater use the net to remove the live aquatic bait and place it in a separate holding container, transferring as little water as possible. Ask the boater to pull the plug and drain all the water from the well or container. Follow the standard operating procedures for your decontamination unit and perform a standing water decontamination of the live well or container. Flush the container with 120° Fahrenheit water with low pressure. Be sure to keep the top of the attachment close to the sides of the compartment to prevent temperature loss. Continue to flush the container until the exit temperature reaches 120° Fahrenheit. Allow the decontamination water to fully drain and then ask the boater to replace the drain plug. A&S inspection stations which allow live aquatic bait should keep lake water available for boaters entering the reservoir. Boaters exiting with legal bait fish should use distilled water. Fill the well up with lake water and transfer the bait back to the original container. Once the process is finished, thank the boater and allow the boater to launch. Inspectors must remember to decontaminate any equipment used, such as buckets and nets, with 120° Fahrenheit low-pressure water. Performing standing water decontaminations for live aquatic bait eliminates the risk of transferring zebra or quagga mussel veligers, pathogens, and other invasive species in the water stored in live wells or other containers on the watercraft. Colorado Parks and Wildlife thanks you for protecting our waters from harmful invasive species.
Study the table to get a better idea of temperature, pressure, and exposure times for different types of decontaminations and locations. We will cover full decontaminations next. This photo is a close-up of the underside of a ski boat from Wisconsin that appeared relatively clean above the waterline. If you suspect that you have found mussels or other A&S, or you know you have found a mussel boat, then you will need to follow the full decontamination protocol. Always follow the procedures in order: report, document, collect, and decontaminate. Never allow the boater to leave with a mussel boat or other suspected A&S. Call law enforcement for assistance if necessary. When filling out documentation, be as accurate as possible. The WID mobile application has been enhanced to guide you through the full decontamination process and act as the primary documentation tool. Please utilize the application for your full decontamination data collection process. Start with the CL number on the port side for the first photo. For the second photo, zoom out on the entire watercraft. Photograph the port section to stern, then stern to bow on starboard side. Capture any damage in the areas where specimens are located. End photos with the CL number again. Beginning and ending the series of photos with the CL number makes the series easier to find in the camera. Make sure to get good photos of the gimbal area from several angles. Take photos of the specimen far away and up close. Hold a common object next to the specimen for scale, such as a pen or a penny. Take another series of photos in the same fashion after decontamination. To avoid damaging the watercraft during specimen collection, never use a knife or sharp object. Only use the tools provided in the sampling kits at each WID location. Plastic paint scrapers work well. Be sure to properly preserve and seal the samples. Send them via FedEx within 24 hours and report that the sample has been shipped. Now, let's watch a video demonstrating the sample collection process.
When a full decontamination is performed because invasive mussels or other aquatic invasive species are found on a watercraft, samples must be collected. To collect samples, you will need the kit provided by Colorado Parks and Wildlife. This kit includes 70% ethanol, a teardropper bottle, a plastic paint scraper, glass collection vials, bubble wrap, padded envelopes, a pen and pencil, a sample collection form, stickers, and paper labels. Begin by filling out the sample collection form, which is page 4 of the decontamination paperwork. Be as complete as possible. Using a teardropper bottle, transfer ethanol from the reservoir into the vial and fill it halfway. Use the plastic paint scraper to gently scrape the specimens into the glass collection vial. Collect as many samples as will fit into the vial. If necessary, use more than one vial to collect samples. Fill the vial with ethanol to cover the specimens completely. With a pencil, write the date, location, boat registration, and inspector number on the paper label. Place it inside the vial with the sample. Tightly close the lid and seal it with electric tape. Using a pen, fill out the same information on the sticker label and place it on the outside of the vial. This ensures that at least one label will be legible if the alcohol leaks and damages the ink. Wrap the sample vials in bubble wrap to ensure they do not break during shipping. Put the vials in a Ziploc bag. Write the date, location, boat registration, and inspector number on the bag. Place the bubble wrap samples in a padded envelope mailer along with the white copy page 4 of the sample collection form. Within 24 hours, overnight the package to the laboratory in Brush and email the state coordinator to notify them that a sample has been shipped. Finally, decontaminate and store supplies back in the kit so they are ready to go for the next collection.
Interior compartments with pumps must be flushed with 120°F water at low pressure to avoid damaging the pumps. Pay close attention to temperature, pressure, and the length of time for each application. Remember that only state-certified authorized agents are permitted to operate the decontamination units. Never give a member of the public the ability to operate a decontamination unit. For a full decontamination, all parts of the watercraft that come into contact or hold equipment that came into contact with the water body must be exposed to hot water at the appropriate temperature and pressure to ensure the ANS is dead and removed. Sometimes more than one decontamination will be required to properly decontaminate a fully encrusted watercraft. Begin by flushing the through-hull discharge ports with 120°F low pressure water for 1 minute. Flush the interior compartments, soak carpets, gear, and other equipment with 120°F low pressure water. Next, flush the motor or engine with 140°F low pressure water until the exiting water reaches 140. To flush the I/O or inboard engine compartment or bilge, better known as the doghouse, you must fill the compartment with 120°F water. It will take approximately 4 to 5 gallons. Then, have the owner pull the plug and continue to flush until the exiting water reaches 120°F. Be aware that the bilge pump may come on when the water reaches the float. Be very careful around the gimbal unit. The boots or seals are very delicate and can blow out easily. Never use high pressure on the gimbal unit or speed wheels and transducers. When decontaminating an inboard engine, use a Fake-A-Lake to flush the engine through the engine inlet. Look for the screen cover. Be sure to decontaminate the intakes using 140°F water when you decontaminate the hull. Also, when performing a full decontamination on an inboard, make sure to fully decontaminate the props, prop shaft support, and rudder. Once with low pressure, once with high pressure 140° water. After flushing the engine, add 4 to 5 gallons of 120°F water to the engine compartment. Remove the plug and continue to flush until the exit water reaches 120. During the 2018 season, CPW identified several adult mussels in the sea strainers of inboard engines. During a full decontamination, sea strainers should be removed by the vessel owner, and all material should be flushed from the strainer cup and mesh insert. While the sea strainer is removed, the intake hose leading to the sea strainer should be backflushed until water exits the engine intake at 140°F. Once complete, request that the operator reinstall the sea strainer. The sea strainer will be flushed again when performing the decontamination of the engine. Something to consider when performing a decontamination is that water temperature decreases approximately 15 to 20 degrees per foot of distance when sprayed with a power nozzle. The maximum distance you should keep the spray nozzle from the hull is 12 inches. Keep the wand within a few inches of the hull at a 45-degree angle and work one area at a time. Never scrub the hull with the wand. Use low pressure on all carpeted areas, decals, electrical connections, gimbal areas, on the inboard and outboard engines, interior compartments, transducers, depth sounders, and all of their wiring. Examine the trailer prior to decontamination. Hand remove any loose debris and pay attention to loose nuts or bolts, as these can become dangerous projectiles under pressure. Use high pressure on hard parts and low pressure on anything that could be damaged. Most PWCs have a winterization or flushing port that can be utilized for decontamination. When decontaminating jet engines, the engine should be started prior to delivering water to the propulsion system. Once the water is taken up, it should expel from the jet and temperature can be monitored until it reaches 140°F. Decontaminating most jet boats is very similar to decontaminating a PWC. However, there are some styles of jet boats that cannot be started out of the water. Please consult with the vessel owner prior to performing the decontamination. Examine this table to get a better idea of the temperatures, pressures, and exposure times for the different parts of the decontamination. After performing the decontamination, be sure to take pictures of the watercraft. After pictures will follow the same flow as the before pictures. These pictures are needed to document the removal of any suspect ANS and ensures our protection to avoid liability of any existing damage to the watercraft. Complete the data collection record and submit when Wi-Fi is available. This will distribute all paperwork to the State ANS Program Office, the decontamination location, and the watercraft owner. Make sure you check full decontamination on the seal receipt and mark MB in the notes section of the receipt for a mussel boat. Practice taking pictures with the camera or tablet provided. Understand how to use the macro or flower setting. Take good care of your sample and make sure it gets in the mail as soon as possible. Consult your training manual for full collection protocols. Now, let's recap by watching the full decontamination video.
Boats transporting invasive mussels have been intercepted at lakes and reservoirs throughout Colorado and the western United States. Therefore, boat inspectors must stay alert to recognize high risk factors and be prepared to decontaminate vessels if mussels or other invasive species are found during an inspection. A full decontamination is required if adult or juvenile mussels are found, or even if you suspect that a boat may be transporting invasive species. Under law, possession of mussels is prohibited, and contaminated vessels must be detained and decontaminated. This video will show you the steps for performing a full decontamination of a watercraft. If you find a boat carrying mussels or other invasive species, you must report this finding to your supervisor or crew leader.
6545 on tack. I think we have a mussel boat.
Your supervisor will immediately notify the state invasive species coordinator. Once the report has been made, there are several steps that must be performed before you can begin the full decontamination. This can be a lengthy process depending on the complexity of the watercraft and the level of infestation. Perform a high-risk inspection of the watercraft and document all of the areas on the boat where mussels or other invasive species are attached. Be sure to fill out the high-risk inspection form while conducting the inspection. Have the boater empty all compartments and place any recreational equipment on tarps to be inspected later. It's always best to inspect compartments when they are fully empty. Take digital photographs before and after decontaminations. After performing the high-risk inspection, take before photographs to show where invasive species are present and to note if there is any pre-existing damage to the watercraft or trailer. If possible, take video of the watercraft as you perform the inspection. Begin with a close-up of the boat's registration number. Then, take wide photos of the watercraft's bow, port side, starboard side, and transom. Next, take both wide and close-up photos of any invasive species that are attached to the watercraft. Use a ruler or pencil to show scale in the photographs. Be sure to photograph each location where mussels or other species are present. If you find zebra or quagga mussels, be sure to photograph the specimen's byssal threads. If accessible, take close-up photos of the gimbal from several angles. Complete the series of photographs by taking another photograph of the boat's registration number. This helps to ensure that the series of digital photographs are of the same boat when they are filed later. Before moving on to the next step, check to make sure the digital photographs are clear and that the invasive species are easily identified. After completing the high-risk inspection, fill out the first 3 pages of the full decontamination paperwork. Be as complete as possible and include as many details as you can about the watercraft's history. Be sure to document all waters where the boat has launched in the last 6 months. Next, collect several samples of the mussels or other invasive species and properly preserve them for identification at the laboratory. Use the sample collection kit and follow the collection procedures on the top of page 4 of the full decontamination paperwork. Fill out the bottom of page 4 and send it with the collected samples to the Aquatic Animal Health Lab within 24 hours for identification. Once you have finished the high-risk inspection, completed all paperwork, taken photos, and collected samples, you can begin the decontamination process. For full decontaminations, all parts of the boat must be exposed to hot water at the appropriate temperature and pressure to ensure that mussels or other invasive species are killed and removed. Similar to performing an inspection, it is critically important that you perform a full decontamination in a standardized and repeatable fashion. Use the acronym TIME to help you remember the order and steps required in performing a full decontamination. T stands for through-hull discharge ports. I stands for interior compartments. M stands for motor or engine, and E stands for exterior of watercraft and trailer. To decontaminate the through-hull fittings, connect the diffuser wand to the trigger. Verify the water is set at 120 degrees. Press the diffuser up against the opening of the through-hull discharge port and decontaminate each port for 1 minute or until the water backflushes. To decontaminate the interior compartments, start with the forward compartments and work back toward the stern. Be sure to decontaminate every compartment that holds water or that may have stored equipment that came in contact with the water. Use low pressure, 120 degree water to decontaminate all interior compartments. If the boater has an inboard, outboard, or inboard engine, have the boater raise the lid of the engine compartment. Put the low pressure wand behind the engine to decontaminate the engine compartment with 120 degree water. If applicable, have the boat owner activate pumps to drain the interior compartments as much as possible. Use low pressure water to soak all equipment that has been placed on the tarp. Be sure to thoroughly clean the anchor and its rope or chain. Turn off the decontamination unit by first turning off the burner and make adjustments to flush the engine. To perform an engine flush, you must change the spray attachments by attaching the hose to the wand and the muffs to the hose. Place the muffs over the intake holes on the lower unit of the engine. Have the boater lower the engine to the vertical position. Turn the decontamination unit back on and increase the temperature to 140 degrees. Check to make sure that the intake holes are completely covered. Have the boater start the motor in neutral. Run the engine until the exiting water reaches 140 degrees. Finally, have the boater turn off the engine. Once the engine is off, turn off the decontamination unit. Safely remove the muffs and allow the lower unit to drain. The gimbal area of the inboard-outboard engine must be soaked for 2 minutes on each side with 140 degree low pressure water to ensure adequate exposure time. Last, decontaminate the exterior of the watercraft. This is a 2-part process. First, rinse the hull with low pressure, 140 degree water to soak the exterior of the watercraft to kill any invasive species that are present. Be sure to thoroughly soak the transom and all carpeted trailer bunks. Use low pressure on all carpeted areas, decals, electronics, depth sounders, and wiring. Be sure to decontaminate the openings of any tubular frames on trailers. Next, connect the 40 degree high pressure nozzle to the end of the wand and use high pressure spray to remove any attached mussels or other invasive species. Keep the wand at a 45 degree angle and work methodically in one direction. Keep the tip of the wand approximately 12 inches from the hull and trailer as you work around the boat. Take your time and verify that all visible mussels or other invaders are removed. After the decontamination is completed, give the boat some time to fully drain. If mussel shells are still present, reflush or respray to fully remove mussels from those areas. Once the boat has drained and the decontamination is complete, Perform a second high-risk inspection using the high-risk inspection form. If possible, it's best to have a different inspector perform the final high-risk inspection. Compare the two forms and verify that the mussels or other invasive species originally detected have been completely removed. If any mussels are found during the second inspection, begin the decontamination process again. Finally, take a series of after photos in the same sequence as before. There should be 2 complete sets of photographs for comparison. This is important to document that mussels have been removed and that the watercraft has not been damaged. Apply a seal and provide the boater a properly filled out receipt. Give the boater the pink copies of all paperwork and remind them to allow the watercraft to dry completely before launching again. Finally, send the white copies of paperwork, along with all photographs, to the state program office. Keep the yellow copies on file at the inspection station and mark full decontamination on the activity log or mobile application. Be sure to send all samples to the lab within 24 hours.
Please never turn a mussel boat loose. If you cannot decontaminate it, get help. There are options to resolve the problem, and the program office will help rearrange something for you. Call for an officer if necessary. If your site has not performed a real decontamination, you must perform 1 practice standing water and 1 practice full decontamination per month to keep current on protocols and ensure decon-ready equipment. Thank you! Please, take the Module 4 exam to complete this course.